Odds are you have at least one famous relative your family used to tell you about when you were little. Like your great-uncle Sylvester delivered Abraham Lincoln's mail. The same is true for celebrities. In fact, several well-known actors, artists, and pop culture figures are directly related to some of the most notable people in history. No offense to Uncle Sylvester. So, today we're taking a look at some celebrities whose ancestors made history. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other celebrities you would like to hear about. Okay, time for 23andMe, the motion picture. Helena Bonham Carter, who is known for her appearances in things like Fight Club and The Crown, can boast that her family tree includes a British Prime Minister. Her great-grandfather was Herbert Henry Asquith, who headed Parliament from 1908 to 1916. Asquith's daughter, Violet Bonham Carter, was both Helena's paternal grandmother and a total badass. Politically engaged and close friends with Winston Churchill, Violet opposed the rise of fascism in the 1930s so fiercely that she ended up in Hitler's so-called Black Book of Anti-Fascist Britons, whom he wanted to arrest. When Carter participated in a British genealogy series to find out more about Violet and her other grandparents, she urged, "I feel every young person should go and interview their grandparents." Of course, not everyone's grandparents make history, but we bet more than a few of them have wound up on a famous person's shit list. Mel Gibson's Braveheart dropped in 1995. and told the story of how William Wallace helped achieve an independent Scotland under the rule of Robert the Bruce. And for our purposes here today, Robert the Bruce is additionally noteworthy for being an ancestor of Doctor Strange star Tilda Swinton. Swinton's family tree stretches back over a millennium in England and Scotland, and her noble family roots are anchored in the 800s. As she explained in an interview with The Guardian in 2003, all families are old. It's just that mine have lived in the same place a long time and happened to write things down. Though several films have been produced about her historic ancestor, like Outlaw King and Braveheart, Swinton hasn't appeared in any of them. Yet. Actor Rashida Jones claims descent from 20th century immigrants on her mother Peggy Lipton's side, and a line of American and European royalty through her father, the legendary record producer Quincy Jones. And when Quincy Jones participated in PBS's African American Lives to learn more about his heritage, he discovered that while the majority of his ancestry can be traced to Africa, much of his ancestry comes from Europe. Specifically, the Joneses are related to Edward I of England. Allow us to spin his record. Edward was noteworthy for being such an unrelenting a-hole towards Scotland. He was nicknamed the Hammer of the Scots, and he's credited with regularizing the English Parliament. Jones is also related to Betty Washington Lewis, who was George Washington's sister and an advocate for American independence. Actor Edward Norton is known for his 3 Oscar nominations and his roles in films including American History X, Glass Onion, Birdman, and Fight Club. Don't spoil the end. What he is not known for is being related to the major historical figure and only real-life Disney princess, Pocahontas. But we think more people should talk about that. Pocahontas was the daughter of Powhatan, a Native American chief who ruled in the 17th century in the area claimed by colonists near Jamestown, Virginia. She was captured as a teenager by English settlers, then married farmer John Rolfe, who took her to England. Pocahontas perished in 1617, and since then, her role in American history has become legend. But in an episode of Finding Your Roots on PBS that aired in January of 2023, Norton learned that Pocahontas and Rolfe were indeed his 12th great-grandmother and great-grandfather. Host Henry Louis Gates Jr. told Norton he traced the ancestry via the couple's 1614 marriage certificate. It just makes you realize what a small piece of the whole human story you are, Norton said. He then performed a duet of Colors of the Wind with a singing raccoon. Many children dream of living in a castle, but some actually get to do it. Downton Abbey and Game of Thrones star Rose Leslie grew up at Lickley Head Castle, her family's 16th century Scottish home. Your odds of growing up in a castle increase considerably if you're from the UK. They are just lousy with castles over there. Through both her mother and father, who's the head of Clan Leslie, Leslie claims significant historical figures as kin, including King Charles II. Hey, we just did an episode about him. Interestingly, Leslie's Game of Thrones co-star and husband, Kit Harington, also counts King Charles II as an ancestor. Listen, King Chuck got around. Charles was also a lover of the theater, which indirectly enabled Leslie's career. It was during Charles's reign, beginning in the 1660s, that it became legal for women to professionally act. And speaking of Kit Harington, his mother is a descendant of Robert Catesby, the mastermind behind the so-called gunpowder plot in 1605. You know, the whole remember the 5th of November thing in V for Vendetta. Catesby, a Roman Catholic in an aggressively Protestant England, schemed to blow up Parliament and replace the monarchy with a Catholic one. And amusingly, Harington actually played Robert Catesby in 2017's Gunpowder. However, Harington clarified that he doesn't have particularly fond feelings for his notorious relative, and described Catesby as a deeply sad man. Deeply sad, huh? Sounds like Harington was the perfect choice. Did Jon Snow ever smile? Remember how Snow was always getting a crap deal? Well, Harington is also related to Sir John Harington, who is credited with creating the flush toilet. Another Game of Thrones co-star, actor Harry Lloyd, also has a famous ancestor. Lloyd plays Viserys Targaryen, the guy who got all the gold dumped on his head. But in addition to all that gold, his family tree contains the legendary author Charles Dickens, who wrote that book that one Bill Murray movie was based on. Dickens is revered as one of the best-loved writers of all time in any language. As a celebrity and best-selling author, he used his novels to shed light on poverty and other social conditions in the 19th century. And as anyone who's ever seen Oliver can attest, he wrote books that made great musicals. British-born actor Cary Elwes, who is arguably best known for The Princess Bride, but also makes a strong appearance in the Saw franchise, is a descendant of John Elwes, who some claim was Charles Dickens' inspiration for the character Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Despite inheriting mountains of wealth and becoming a member of Parliament, John Elwes didn't like spending money. He routinely wore through clothes and didn't want to pay for the upkeep of his home. And his frugality was so well known that contemporaries even called him the celebrated miser. Charles Dickens, who probably wasn't keen on getting sued, didn't call the character John Elwes, of course. He reportedly came up with the name Ebenezer Scrooge after stumbling across a headstone for Ebenezer Scrooge in Edinburgh, presumably while touring cemeteries with the ghost of Christmas future. Anderson Cooper is more than just a well-dressed newsman. He's part of one of America's most storied families, the Vanderbilts. In fact, he's the son of famed fashion designer Gloria Vanderbilt. That means through his mom's side of the family, Cooper is the great-great-great-grandson of Cornelius Commodore Vanderbilt, the shipping magnate and railway tycoon. By the time Vanderbilt passed in 1877, he had built one of the largest and most lucrative shipping networks in the country and had accumulated around $100 million, which is roughly the equivalent of $3 billion today. He presumably got up very early in the morning. But Cornelius Vanderbilt's descendants squandered the family wealth through conspicuous spending, including the construction of architectural gems like the Breakers in Newport, Rhode Island, and the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina. Guess that's why Anderson has to slum it on cable. Michaela Strauss, the performing artist King Princess, has deep roots in her native New York City. In fact, she can claim as an ancestor the owner of one of the city's most recognizable stores. Isidore Strauss, her great-great-grandfather, purchased Macy's in the late 1800s and also served as a New York representative in Congress. But Strauss isn't only remembered for his entrepreneurship or public service. In a twist that would bum anyone out, he and his wife Ida were among the RMS Titanic's most famous victims when it struck an iceberg and sank in 1912. London-born actor and rapper Riz Ahmed, best known for his Oscar-nominated role in Sound of Metal, has deep roots in South Asia, since both his parents immigrated from Pakistan. Among Ahmed's ancestors is Sir Shah Muhammad Suleiman, As Ahmed described him, Suleiman was the first Indian judge appointed by the British in Uttar Pradesh. It's hard to overstate how much the British weren't into power sharing, so that was a seriously impressive achievement, which is to say Suleiman was a trailblazer in colonial India. In addition to a successful legal career, he was a mathematician and education advocate. Oscar-winning actor Christopher Plummer had a distinguished career on stage and screen, but you're most likely to remember him as the stone-cold father from The Sound of Music, who rips up Nazi flags with his bare hands while raising the most musically talented family in the history of Europe. But Plummer's success isn't all that surprising, since he comes from a family of high achievers. His great-grandfather was Sir John Abbott. Abbott served as Prime Minister of Canada from 1891 to 1892. Despite his career, Abbott once said, "I hate politics." Maybe he should have tried acting. Speaking of guys named Christopher, geneticist Adam Rutherford asserts literally everyone can trace their lineage to Charlemagne if they are of European ancestry, and actor Christopher Lee is of European ancestry and is related to Charlemagne. So we guess the Rutherford guy was right. Born in London in 1922, Lee received attention as an actor with his appearance in Horror of Dracula in 1958. As Count Dracula, Lee's elegance and charm set the foundation for future macabre and dark roles. During the 1970s, Lee branched out to more dramatic and comedic roles. He also led such a wild life outside of acting that we did an entire episode about it. Charlemagne should brag about being related to him. One of Lee's interests outside of acting was heavy metal. And no, we're not joking. In 2010, Lee released a symphonic metal concept album titled Charlemagne, By the Sword and the Stone. He followed it up with 2013's Charlemagne, The Omens of Death, before passing away in 2015. So what do you think? Which of these famous family trees surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.